Hello and welcome to Echo View, your one stop for everything about environment and also how we see it. Bringing you conversations from around your environment and also that affects you. My name is Paul Oladipupo and we're bringing you today in-depth look at the climate change discussion from the just concluded 80th United Nations General Assembly that was held in New York. This year, the UNGA marked a pivotal moment in global diplomacy, convening world leaders to address the most pressing issue of our time, the climate crisis. As we approach the critical threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming, the urgency for transformative action has never been more clearer. UNGA 80 serves as a platform for nations to affirm their commitment, confront the challenges ahead, and also chart a path towards a more sustainable future. In today's special segment, we'll be delving into key highlights from the Assembly, examining the pledges made by presidents and also world leaders from a few states, because we can't take all. The challenges that we acknowledge and also a collective resolve to combat the climate change. From the voices of island nations on the front line to commitments of major emitters, the discussion at UNGA 80 underscores the global consensus that climate action is not optional but imperative. Stay tuned as we explore the outcome of UNGA 80 today and also what it means for our planet and also the future. We'll be going on the break, and once we're back, we'll continue with EcoView.
Robotic Process Automation, RPA. RPA is about automating repetitive tasks that typically require human intervention, whether it's processing invoices in the finance sector or automating customer service interactions. RPA is transforming how businesses operate. The benefit? Employees can focus on higher value tasks, while software bots handle the mundane stuff. However, RPA implementation comes with high upfront costs and requires maintenance. The RPA market is expected to grow from $1.89 billion in 2020 to $13.74 billion by 2028. But companies must balance automation with potential job losses.
Yeah, welcome back, and if you're just joining us, this is still Echo View. My name is Paul Oladipupo, and today we're discussing and also highlighting key issues around climate change, climate in focus, and also taking away the key takeaways from UNGA 80. The core message emerging from UNGA 80 was one of undeniable urgency, framed by global consensus that climate change is not optional. The Assembly convened world leaders at these very critical times as we approach this threshold of 1.5 global warming, necessitation of transformative actions around the globe. So today we'll be looking at speeches of world leaders at the UNGA 20 on climate change, and we'll be starting from a very small island in Fiji with what exactly the minister said. Let's listen to what he said.
An address of His Excellency Silveni Ligamamada Rabuka, Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs, Civil Service and Public Enterprises and Information of the Republic of Fiji. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Thank you. Madam President of the United Nations General Assembly, Secretary General of the United Nations, leaders, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I congratulate Her Excellency Annalena Baerbock on assuming the presidency of the 80th session of the General Assembly, as only the 5th woman to be elected to this position in the last 80 years. Madam President, Fiji reiterates its long-standing support for multilateralism and the role of the international rules-based order, plays for the status and interests of small states. This year, Fiji commemorates 55 years of independence and stands alongside member states and takes stock of the 80 years since the finest and disproportionate climate threats with negligible fraction of global emissions. Those who shoulder the blame must foot the bill. Science is clear. The powerful G20 group has been responsible for 80% of total emissions. I plead with them that they must lead the charge, keeping with the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities in light of different national circumstances. Heading to COP30, I hope that the world will push harder and members agree on pending common grounds of concern. Fiji stands strongly in support of Australia's bid to host COP31 as a Pacific COP. We need a loss and damage fund that meets the scale of the challenge and developed countries meeting their adaptation financing promises. We continue to reward polluters who wreck our planet. The fossil fuel industry continues to pocket massive profits and subsidies, while everyday people bear the costs of climate catastrophe, from rising insurance premiums to lost livelihoods. We insist on a shift from fossil fuel subsidies and investments to a just energy transition by putting a price on carbon and to implement innovative sources of financing, including solidarity levies on fossil fuel extraction through legally binding mechanisms. Madam President, the ICJ advisory opinion on climate change on July 2025 affirms this. Countries that are liable for climate change damage must bear the full cost. Some Pacific atolls sit 1 to 2 meters above mean sea level. It is grossly unfair that when disasters hit, the costs of recovery force these countries to take on debts, a second layer of penalty for a situation they did not create. As signatories to the Paris Agreement, we are contributing our fair share towards the global effort to guide our low-carbon, climate-resilient development. Under our family-first Pacific regionalism foreign policy priority, Fiji stands with its fellow Pacific Island neighbors. Some of our smaller Pacific Island communities are struggling to stay above sea level. The international community is faltering in its commitment to keep below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Low-lying Pacific states expect the worst. Today, my government is looking at ways to host these island communities if it is not possible to remain on their islands. The dignity of the people that are forced to leave their homes is fundamental. Let's start with the legal definition. Today, they are merely referred to as displaced people. In the Pacific, where 90% of land is communally owned, those that are being displaced will be landless before they become stateless, stripping them further of their dignity. In this situation, Fiji is coming face to face with the reality of sovereignty within sovereignty in all its details. Goodwill, time and resources are critical. This is complex, sensitive and costly work. We are setting the precedent. We have no margin for error as we are dealing with real lives whose impacts may compound existing stresses. Excellent.
Very robust conversation and very long one, about 31 or 20, about 20 something minutes of him discussing and also breaking all of the things down, especially when it comes to climate change. He spoke so much about the impact of climate change. And you know, the interesting thing about climate change is that climate change isn't just having impact on the environment and all of that. It also has some kind of social economic effects on small cities like Fiji and small islands like Fiji that are still developing. And you know, it's them the others. He spoke about the rising sea level. He spoke about a number of things. I mean, the leader of small island developing states provided this particular leader provided the sharpest focus on the climate impact and the immediate impact at the moment. And we also had other presidents like President Audi Hilda rather of the Marshall Island also, who also highlighted the existential nature of the threats in our own state. Our address moved beyond general calls for help, you know, pointing out the failure of promises to translate into tangible solutions. I mean, usually with all of the COPs, all of the conference of parties that's held, I mean, they're going to be holding the 31st very soon. That's sometimes next year. There have been a lot of promises, a lot of, you know, a lot of pledges, but most of them have not been fulfilled. And that's one of the issues that small islands, and usually small islands like this, that actually face the impact so much. Hilda said in our words, promises do not reclaim land in our toll nations like mine. And it's a clear indictment of the insufficient pace of implementation of all of these things. And also we just watched the Minister Seviti of Fiji who reinforced the critique by forcing heavily on the failure of climate financing. He specifically noted that previous commitments, such as the widely publicized goal to provide 100 billion annually in climate finance, remains unmet. And I think that's one of the things that the International Judicial Court on Climate also still spoke about sometimes in, I guess that was in August, I guess. You know, it's a whole lot when it comes to climate issues, especially in this particular. A lot of presidents, even the vice president of Nigeria, also spoke about climate change right there at UNGA 80. Also, the minister also went further, urging that even if this financial benchmark were not reached, the scale of funding should not still be insufficient to address the rapid growing challenges that they are facing in cities like theirs. We'll go quickly now to watch a video from to see what also another world leader here in Africa now, two presidents here in Africa, that's the president of Ghana and also the president of Somalia, to see what they said as regards climate change at the UNGA train 80, and also we'll discuss that after that. Okay, so it just shows how, because usually I think Africa contributes less than 4% or thereabout to all of the things that have led to the climate disaster that we're having now at the moment. But guess what? Now Africa is facing the worst of it. I mean, we're seeing floods in our states. We're seeing ash storm. I mean, sometimes in March and also April, there was the issue of, you know, the issue of heat wave here in Nigeria. All of these things are all because of how climate change is destabilizing our social life at the end of the day. Let's take a video, and also let's take a quick look at the video from the president of Ghana and also Somalia.
Continue to exacerbate. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the resilient Somali people live with the climate crisis every day. For us, climate change is not an abstract. It is a horrible reality of disrupted and destroyed lives. Somalia's contributes almost nothing to global emission, yet we endure some of the harshest consequences. Droughts, floods, and rising seas erode livelihoods and displace families, threatening to undo the progress we are making towards peace and development. As a government, we understand that addressing The adverse impact of climate change is a global public good that requires strong partnership and genuine burden sharing. On our part, Somalia has adopted the national climate change policy, updated our national determined contribution, and is preparing its first biennial transparency report. We are also developing a robust national climate finance strategy to guide how we mobilize and manage resources to address the challenge. To ensure these resources are used effectively, we have established the National Climate Fund, a dedicated institution to channel climate financing transparently and directly to the communities on the ground, to the communities on the ground. We are restoring degraded lands, strengthening water security, and piloting nature-based solutions that protect both people and ecosystems. Despite our efforts, accessing climate finance remains too slow and complex. As our government strengthens its domestic revenue capacity and initiates the process for pre-arranging disaster risk financing, we call for financial support that is accessible, affordable, predictable, and just from the international financing institutions and capital markets. Nations on the front line, like Somalia, cannot be left to face this crisis alone, unsupported by the dominant global financial architecture, which is not fit for the purpose in this age of great challenge. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, the 80th anniversary of the UN General Assembly is the best possible opportunity to take stock of our global achievement as far as our common commitments to sustainable development are concerned. We quietly transitioned from the Millennium Development Goals to now the Sustainable Development Goals.
I mean, yet again, it's the issue of climate financing, especially in small regions and also developing countries, that only contributed. I wish we could have had the president of Ghana also or a video clip, but unfortunately we have technical issues. I read out some. One of the things about climate refugees now, we're having more of climate refugees around. He also he read this poem from written by a Somali British poet, which was titled "Home," and he says that you have to understand that no one puts their child in a boat unless the water is safer than land. No one burns their palm under trains beneath carriage. I mean, it's just all of this conversation is just a disclosure and also underscores how climate change has destabilized socioeconomic systems for some countries, even beyond the coastal region. President John Mahama of Ghana, for example, linked the environmental instability directly to human displacement, and we've seen it observed, running from one place to another. I mean, if for a farmer, for example, and then is not having a fertile ground, is not having rainfall in where he is, he has to relocate. And these are things we were saying. And all of these things are fraud majorly by climate change, with many of those people considered as climate refugees, just as the president of Ghana mentioned. And also, the construct the president of Somalia, that's Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, who addressed the immense financial cost of climate-related disaster. The country that won't tell you that mitigating climate issues are very cheap. They come at a very expensive cost. He also explained that these severe events strain national budgets. I mean, because usually some of them come as emergency and have to move from one place to another to able to mitigate all of these climate effects on their states, forcing governments into difficult financial trade-offs. The diversion of necessary resources effectively means that funds crucially for development priorities are instead channeled into disaster response and also recovery effort, which is usually not on the bright side, because all of these things are more like wasted money at the end of the day, because you cannot recoup investments from it. The plan was to probably settle so amount on development of the country, and now they have to divert this into something else entirely. Like I said earlier, that there's the landscape of climate change it hits every country differently. It's even in countries, it hits communities differently. For example, the way climate change is eating in the south is different from how climate change is eating in the north here in Nigeria, and that's how it happened in every country, in every state. I mean, also in the US as well. There was the issue of the bush the bushfire a while ago, the wildfire that burned a bush, the very wild forest in that is in California now. And you see, all of these things have their own impact, because already, if a bush is burning, meaning there are a number of trees that are going down with it, it means that the animals that have that place as their habitat are fleeing as well. We also had similar, I think that was a few years ago now, Australia as well, risk, and they had base, and it is all of these things. It's not just human beings that are affected at the end of the day, or even animals are also affected. It cuts across every one of us, and it all boils down to how well we're able to manage some things. I mean, a very good example, and an example I give people usually, is the example of how we use our nylons, because it's said that at least you should use your nylon bags for at least 5 times before disposal, meaning that if you use your nylon, if you get a nylon once, you can keep it, store it for another use, probably use it for 5-10 times before disposing it. Like that, you're not harming the environment. And I think that's one of the things that we also mentioned, that one of the reasons why we have so much of plastic pollution, so much of nylon pollution, so much of styrofoam pollution, is because all of these things are usually used just once and then disposed immediately. If we can probably keep them, I mean, in my house, I've mentioned before this show about how I usually would keep my nylons or plastic just for another use, just reuse for disposal, and that's how it should be. We shouldn't just use a plastic once and then dispose immediately. It's not so good most times. We'll go now to I'm going to quick break now. Once we return, I will continue with this discussion, climate in focus, and also taking away key points from UNGA 80 as we look out for COP 31 next year in Fiji and a few other countries. My name remains Paul.
Enhancing cybersecurity. As cyber attacks grow more sophisticated, cybersecurity technologies are evolving to defend against them. AI-driven threat detection systems, zero-trust architectures, and advanced encryption methods are becoming the new norm. However, keeping up with rapidly evolving threats is a challenge, especially for industries that handle sensitive data like finance and healthcare. The cybersecurity market is expected to reach $248.26 billion by 2024. But the constant need for innovation and adaptation means businesses need to stay vigilant.
Yeah, welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is the Echo View, and we've been discussing keenly around the discussion around climate change, climate impact, climate finance. I mean, it's very interesting to see. I mean, there are different sides of climate, and now we're getting into it. We'll go and watch a video from the minister, a prime minister in China. Let's see what he's saying as regards climate change. This was also from UNGA 80, that's the United Nations General Assembly, which was held at the United States in New York.
Adopting an inclusive attitude and engaging in exchange and mutual learning is a sure way to build more consensus and collective strength. China has all along engaged in active civilizational exchange and mutual learning. Over the next 5 years, China will carry out 50 development cooperation programs in the field of culture and civilization for fellow developing countries. and host 200 thematic training and seminar programs, contributing its part to inter-civilizational dialogue and the progress of civilizations. Fourth, amid emerging challenges, we must respond with concrete efforts and protect our shared home. Climate change is a major challenge confronting all of us. We should uphold the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, promote the effective implementation of the Paris Agreement, and enhance international collaboration on the green economy. In recent years, technologies such as artificial intelligence, network communications, and biomanufacturing have advanced rapidly. Along with the benefits, they also bring potential risks. We should adhere to the principles of people-centered development, technology for good, and equitable benefits, improve relevant governance rules at a faster pace, and strengthen global governance cooperation, so that technological progress could bring real benefits to humanity in a better way. China has always been a responsible stakeholder in addressing global challenges. Committed to green and low-carbon development, China has established the world's largest and fastest-growing renewable energy system, built the most extensive and complete new energy industrial chain, and announced China's 2035 nationally determined contributions that cover all economic sectors and all greenhouse gases. China has proposed the Global AI Governance Initiative and advocated the establishment of a World AI Cooperation Organization. This time during the 80th session, China will present to the UN the lunar soil samples collected by Chang'e 6 from the far side of the moon. Going forward, China will take more proactive actions and work with all parties to advance global governance in relevant areas. Colleagues, China stands ready to work with all members to uphold the standing and authority of the UN, safeguard the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, support UN reforms to improve its efficiency and capacity to fulfill its mandate, and advocate greater representation and voice of developing countries. China.
I mean, this assessment from China was a very robust one, and one of the things that I just point out quickly is how they're having a very fast-growing energy system. Although they are still dependent on coal at the moment, but they promise to try to reduce that. I guess around April of 2025, there are around 38% of renewable energy that is being used in China to generate electricity and other things. I mean, China has the highest rate of electric vehicles at the moment across the world. And, it's very interesting to see how also they are looking at how to use technology to fight this battle of climate change, because again, it's a very big battle and it's one that needs all hands on deck. And that's funny enough. The title, the theme for this year's Independence, and all hands on deck. And I guess it's not just one that has to do with one community. It's not just one that has to do with one government, but rather it has to be intergovernmental. It has to be intercommunity. It has to be commitments that people would hold yourself accountable for. And I mean, the prime leader of China, right there, actually broke all of these things down. But also, China is looking at how to expand to look for more renewable energy and more sustainable energy as source of electricity. They're looking so much into the wind and also solar power to ensure that as at December 2023 as well, China renewable energy in China was able to surpass about 50% in electricity capacity, which is very, very, very wonderful. global emitters like China, for example, the response are usually very mixed. But China, through its president also, the president Xi Jinping, offered a specific emission reduction pledge, aiming of about 7% to 10% reduction by 2035, while acknowledging that the commitment faced scrutiny with critics. It was reported that the arguments as regards the falls short of the ambition required to meet critical global climate goals, which is obviously 2030, as we all know. I mean, there's been a lot of conversation so far, and we'll be able to break down just a few of them and also what it means and the impact on us all. I would like wrap up that has been said since the beginning of this particular episode. Takeaways from UNGA 80. Let's look at what the Secretary General Antonio Guterres says about climate change at UNGA 80 2025. Let's go watch this.
Sure. And global financial institutions that represent today's world, with far greater participation of developing countries in terms of their composition and their decision making. So let us choose a global economy that works for everyone, men and women. Let us choose human rights and dignity, and let us equip ourselves with the means to ensure a transition for people and the planet. Excellencies, this brings me to the third choice. We must choose climate justice. The climate crisis is accelerating, but so are the solutions. The clean energy future is no longer a distant promise. It's already here. No government, industry, or special interest can stop it. But some are trying, hurting economies, locking in higher prices, and squandering a historic opportunity.
Fossil fuels are a losing bet. Last year, almost all new power capacity came from renewables, and the investment is surging. Renewables are the cheapest and fastest source of new power. They create jobs, drive growth, shield economies from volatile oil and gas markets, connect the unconnected, and can free us from the tyranny of fossil fuels. But not at closing. The International Court of Justice has affirmed the legal obligation of states. We must step up action and ambition, especially through strengthened national climate plans. Tomorrow, I will welcome leaders to announce new targets. The G20, the biggest emitters, must lead, guided by common but differentiated responsibilities.
I mean, Antonio Guterres has actually broke all of these things down, telling us all of these big emitters must actually lead. If you're emitting so much, you should not just do so little. Take intentional action. And that's one of the things that's mentioned. Ghana, Fiji as well. These things are very important. The statement of Antonio Guterres that actually struck me so nice that it says that clean energy future is no longer a distant promise. It is already here, and it's so now governments or industries or no governments, no industries, or even personal interests can stop it, because it is what it is. It is cheaper, it is more affordable, it is more sustainable, and most importantly, it is good for the environment. No windmill harms the environment. Even our solar panels give more carbon to our environment. So why not? We need all of these things to be in play to ensure that we have a more sustainable future. I mean, the gravity of the situation was all summed up by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who actually warned about the biggest emitters right there. He warned the biggest emitters around, ensuring that one biggest emitters around ensuring that they put more effort into combating this particular thing, and also more global efforts are also being efficient to limit the global warming, which is targeted with the warming to target about 1.5 degrees Celsius. Guterres also issued a challenge urging workers who are serious about a 1.5 degrees Celsius target to personally travel to specific regions to witness the challenges firsthand, hoping that they will be exposed and will also the exposure will also help them act even faster. And I guess which is very, very, very true, because sometimes when you see the effect on some communities, the effect of climate change on some communities, you'll be moved so much. Imagine seeing a place where people have to trek distance to just get water, and that's because a river got dry, or because there was a dam that was built. All of these things are very, very, very sad. There are some, I know of a community here in Africa that have to travel up to a mountain to get water and then come down the mountain to use that water. I know that the water is clean, the water is dirty. I guess it's usually rainwater that that is being stored in that particular mountain, and usually they don't have all year rain, and also they have rain in just a specific period of time, and that's what we're seeing. I mean, I was discussing with someone sometimes last week, and I was mentioning that there's a lot of changes as regards the rain pattern, that before now, once you go out of your house and you see the sky, you can predict whether or not rain will fall. But now all of those things, you cannot even predict what happens. All of these things are all effects of climate change. And that's why we are clamoring for everyone, for every community. It's important that no one is left behind. That's the goal. That's the main goal of all of this. No one is left behind. And to ensure that no one is left behind, we need climate justice, meaning that if you are the biggest contributors to the harm that we're currently facing around the world, you also should be the biggest contributors in mitigating all of these effects of climate change. I mean, the key takeaway from this particular, the core takeaway from UNGA 80 is the global consensus that climate change action is no longer optional, it is imperative, and everyone has to be on deck. The voices of the vulnerable remain unheard from the Marshall Islands, which reminding us that promises do not reclaim land. So Fiji criticizing the insufficient $100 billion finance goal reveal its pledges into practice as global efforts remain. Development budget. The commitment has passed. The UN the ICD responsibilities and nations to do better and fulfill that commitment. A lot of commitment has been made, and yet unfulfilled. As we stand by the spirit to the critical 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming threshold, the burden of transformative action rests squarely on world leaders, and call for urgency echoes around the assembly floors, demanding immediate implementation of unwavered accountability. The world is watching, and the time to act is definitely now. This has been EchoView, and also we're having a discussion around climate change at UNGA 80. My name remains Paul, and do not forget to follow us across all social media platforms at Idea TV. Let us all stay informed, let's stay engaged, and let's work together for a more sustainable future. Thanks for watching.